You ready for this? A guy flips out, fatal shooting in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. All over, get this, pizza prep.
Oh, wow. Pizza prep. That's a new one.
Seriously, October 19th, it all goes down at this place. Action Food and Liquor.
Okay.
Owned by a young guy, 26 years old, Jamil Owies. Sadly, he's the victim. And the shooter, 38, Charles Leggett, who, gotta mention this, already had a record dealing heroin.
So not just some random dude having a bad day with his pepperoni, huh?
Right. Makes you wonder if there's a history of, like, anger issues or something.
Yeah, could be a pattern there, but let's not jump ahead. Gotta lay out what we know happened at the store.
So imagine, normal day, convenience store, customers, the usual. Then, bang, gunshot.
Yeah.
Employee in the back, stacking coolers, hears it, comes out, finds Owies on the floor behind the counter.
Awful. And was this employee the one who took Leggett's order?
Yeah, he was making the pizza.
Okay.
But here's where it gets weird. The employee says, Leggett orders, then walks to the back, by the oven, almost like he's watching them or something.
Maybe trying to make sure they got it right. Some people are picky about their pizza.
But then he comes back to the counter, and that's when the arguing starts.
Oh, so the argument's not happening back by the oven, it's up front.
Right, and other customers hear it, say it's loud, aggressive, but nobody could tell what they were fighting about.
Classic case of wish we had security footage moment.
And they did. Good quality, too. You can see the counter clearly, no sound, but the body language says it all.
Okay, so what are we seeing?
Leggett, he's agitated, hands all over the place. Owies looks confused, trying to calm him down, but
Yeah.
that's the thing that gets me. Like, what could have been said to go from 0 to 60 that fast? We know it was about the pizza, but...
Right. We all get bad food sometimes. Annoying, sure, but murder. There's got to be more to it.
Totally. So this is where the security footage gets really hard to watch. Leggett reaches in his pocket, and even knowing what's coming, it's chilling to see that gun. Point blank range, Owies drops, Leggett takes off running.
So it's a manhunt then.
Oh, yeah. They got his ID from the credit card, so it was just a matter of time.
And when they caught him, did he say anything?
He gave a confession, after being read his rights, of course. But what he said, well, this is where the deep dive gets really deep.
Okay, lay it on me.
He shot Owies because the employee was making his pizza without gloves.
Seriously? Gloves?
I'm not kidding. Making his pizza with no gloves on, that's his reason.
Wow. That's something else.
He claims he wanted someone else to remake it with gloves, says Owies got loud and threatening, so he shot him.
But even if that's true, and let's be real, that's a huge if. There's something more going on here, right?
Exactly. Like, was this guy having the worst day of his life? Did something happen before he walked in there?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We can analyze the footage all day long, but to really understand why he snapped, well, we've got to go deeper than the surface.
And luckily, you've got some psychology research in those sources that might shed some light on this whole extreme reaction thing.
All right, let's see what we can figure out.
Buckle up, folks, because I think things are about to get really interesting.
All right, this whole glove thing, got to dig into that. Was he obsessed with hygiene? Control freak? Or is this like displaced anger, you know?
I'm thinking it's got to be deeper than just gloves, right? I mean, we've all seen those customers who get way too intense over nothing but murder. That's a whole different level.
Yeah, and that's where the psychology stuff comes in. One of the articles you sent, it talks about intermittent explosive disorder.
Intermittent what now?
Basically, it's this condition. People have these huge anger outbursts, way out of proportion, triggered by, like, the smallest things.
So maybe the gloves weren't the real issue, more like the last straw after a bunch of other stuff went wrong.
Could be. And don't forget that heroin conviction, substance abuse can mess with mental health, make someone more impulsive, aggressive.
We're not saying he was high 8 to time, but his past might be connected to this, you know?
Exactly. It's all part of the puzzle. And there's this other article talks about the whole culture of outrage thing.
Oh, yeah, that's everywhere these days.
Especially online, people get angry faster, less tolerant, more likely to lash out, you know?
It's like everyone's just waiting to explode. And in this case, poor Jamil Owies was just there.
Tragic, but this case, as extreme as it is, it makes you think about this bigger trend, you know? Why are we so quick to anger these days? Is it all the bad news, social media, or is it something deeper?
Honestly, I feel it too. The pressure to have an opinion on everything, got to be loud about it, nuance and empathy are gone.
And when we lose those things, when we stop seeing each other as human, it gets easier to, like, dehumanize people we disagree with.
Dangerous, right?
Yeah.
That can lead to anything from online harassment to, well, this.
Exactly. So how do we turn down the heat? How do we start talking to each other again? Like actually talking.
$1 million question, right? What's the answer?
It's got to be a group effort. Everyone committing to listening, understanding, finding common ground starts with realizing that anger, it's natural, but we got to handle it the right way.
Learn to disagree without being a jerk.
Yeah.
Vent frustration without punching someone.
Right. Yeah. Emotional intelligence. We all need more of that.
And empathy, remembering everyone's going through something. Got to be more forgiving. Give people the benefit of the doubt.
Absolutely. And this whole thing, it makes you think about mental health services too.
Right, like what if Leggett did have that disorder, the intermittent explosive thing? Could they have helped him?
We can't know for sure, but access to mental health care, that's crucial. No shame in getting help.
This deep dive, it's been intense, but it's also shown us how much individual psychology, social trends, and support systems, how they all connect.
It's a reminder that we're all connected, our actions matter, and building a better world starts with each of us.
And now let's talk about what happens next for Charles Leggett. What kind of legal trouble is he looking at?
Oh, he's in deep first-degree reckless homicide. Serious stuff.
Wow. So what happens now?
His lawyer will probably focus on his mental state, try to get a lesser charge, diminished capacity and all that.
This is going to be interesting to follow. This case makes you think about criminal responsibility, mental health. What does justice even mean in a situation like this?
Heavy stuff. And while we wait for the legal outcome, can't forget the human cost. A life was lost, family grieving, a community trying to make sense of it all.
You're right. This isn't just some abstract debate. Real people were hurt, and we can't forget that.
No, we can't. And while we may never know exactly why Leggett did what he did, we can learn from this and try to build a world where this kind of senseless violence, where it just doesn't happen anymore.
So as we wrap up, I think it all comes down to one question, a simple one, but important. How do we, as people, as a society, how do we create a culture where disagreements don't end in violence? Where empathy and understanding, that's how we treat each other.
That's the challenge we face, and it's one we got to tackle head on if we want a better future.
It's just wild, this whole thing, the argument, the shooting, someone's life gone over a pizza order.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around.
Makes you think, is there a point where we all just, SNIP, like are we all capable of something like this, given the wrong set of circumstances?
That's a pretty dark thought.
It is, right. But is it realistic?
Well, it's definitely something psychologists have looked into. There's this idea, the violence continuum.
Okay, what's
like aggression is a spectrum. One end, you've got little disagreements. The other end, you've got, this extreme violence.
So you're saying it's a slippery slope. Like the more we put up with, even participate in little aggressions, the more likely the big ones become.
Well, it's one way to look at it. Yeah, not that everyone who yells in traffic is going to become a murderer, but the research shows there are things that make violence more likely, things about the individual, things about society as a whole.
We talked about Leggett, maybe mental health issues, the drugs. But what about society? What's pushing all of us towards that aggressive end of the spectrum?
Well, look around. We're drowning in bad news. Social media is designed to get us riled up. Economic inequality, all that creates tension.
It's like we're being set up to be angry.
Kind of, yeah. Then throw in easy access to guns.
Recipe for disaster.
Right, so even small conflicts can turn deadly in a second. Which brings us back to, do we all have a breaking point?
I think we got to believe that we can choose how we react, right?
I hope so. I mean, I'd like to think I wouldn't do something like this, but who knows what I'd do if I was pushed far enough. It's scary.
It is scary, but we all have good and bad inside us. We can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond.
So how do we get off that violence continuum? What can we do?
Starts with knowing yourself, what sets you off, what are your tendencies. Got to have ways to deal with frustration that don't involve hurting anyone.
And teach kids that, right? Conflict resolution, empathy, how to handle your emotions. That should be basic stuff, starting young.
Absolutely. And bigger picture, we got to fix the things that cause violence, poverty, inequality, lack of mental health care. Got to build a society where everyone feels like they matter.
That's a huge task. It is, but it's got to start somewhere, right? With awareness, with each of us deciding to be better.
And remember, even small things can make a difference. A smile, listening to someone, lending a hand, that builds a better world too.
Exactly.
This deep dive, it's been heavy, no doubt, but it's also made us think, made us face some hard truths about ourselves, about the world we live in.
Yeah, but it also gives me hope that we can change things, break the cycle of violence.
So, to everyone listening, let's go out there and DO that. Let's build that better future.